So, Skylanders Reviews was the most series voted for. So Skylanders Reviews will be the series that will be in between Skylanders Chill Season 1 and Skylanders Chill Season 2. Just to get this out of the way, all the series that I told you guys about in that voting video will happen eventually. They probably won't happen for quite a while, but they will happen eventually, so I just want to let you guys know about that. Okay, so we'll be reviewing Skylanders Spyro's Adventure this episode, and at the end of the episode I will give Spyro's Adventure a 1 out of 10 ranking, so let's get right into it. So, in 2011, Toys for Bob made a Toys to Life Spyro game, and it isn't really a Spyro game. A lot of people like to bash Skylanders because they said, oh, it's like, you know, they were trying to cash off of Spyro, but this game does feel, to me, kind of like a Spyro game. I mean, look at the levels. A lot of them feel kind of like Spyro levels to me, but that really isn't what is important in this episode, so let's get to reviewing Skylanders. Okay, so let's talk about the starter pack first. The starter pack was $70, and I think that's actually a pretty good price because you get the game and 3 pretty good figures in Spyro, Trigger Happy, and Gil Grunt. I think those are actually some pretty good figures, some of the most memorable characters in all of Skylands, and I think $70 was a good price for the game. Alright, now let's talk about the levels. Now, a lot of the levels, because this was the first game, they're trying to make a good impression. You got about maybe 2 to 3 to 4 levels based off a certain element. You know, there was a couple fire-based elements, you know, there was a couple life-based elements like treetops and falling forests, which treetops is one of my favorite levels in SSA, so the levels there were pretty good. I feel like Shadowed Islands was a pretty good first level in Skylanders. They show you what you need to do. They show you how to use elemental gates. They show you, how to move turtles and stuff like that. They show you how to use jump pads. And a big thing that I do have with this game is that there is not jumping. I like games where you can jump. You know, instead of platforming, they make you move blocks around and stuff, which slows the game down very much, in my opinion. I think it would have been very good if you could have been able to jump. And this is just like a personal thing for me, but Skylanders 3DS version, which if you guys don't know, the 3DS versions of Skylanders are completely different games. The 3DS versions had jumping from the very beginning, so you could jump in the 3DS versions, but you could not jump in the console versions, which I never understood why that was a thing. Instead of giving you some cool platforming you could do with the Skylanders, instead you just have to use jump pads or move blocks around, which it's not the same, you know what I mean? Okay. So, let's go back to the levels. A lot of the levels I feel like are very unique levels. Obviously, there is a couple element-based levels. Well, all the levels are element-based except for the expansion packs. But I think they have some really good levels, like Krypt, an expansion pack level. That was a really good level. And Treetops, and I can't remember all the level names, I'm sorry. But I think just a lot of the levels were some pretty unique levels. I thought they looked really cool. They were trying to make a great first impression. And they obviously did that because the game alone, its first year, made $500 million, you know, so that's something. Okay, so now that we're talking about levels more and more, the levels, like I said, I think were very unique. You had a bunch of pirate-themed levels, you know, you had a bunch of magic-themed levels, you had a bunch of fire levels, and overall I think the levels are pretty good, but lacking the platforming, like I said, where you can't jump, does slow some of the levels down. Also, now we're talking about levels, and the bosses at some of the end of the levels aren't that great. The only bosses you really ever encounter are the evil versions of the Skylanders, which really aren't that creative. The bosses in SSA weren't that creative. They were hard. There were some hard bosses in it, but they weren't that creative. Instead of, the only really bosses I can think of is that one stone boss that was at the end of Stone Town. I'm pretty sure that's called. That's the only boss that comes up to mind for me in SSA that wasn't an actual evil Skylander version. That was the only boss really that was not an evil version of the Skylanders. And just the bosses mostly weren't really that creative as well. Like a giant stone monster, like he isn't that creative. He kind of looks like Prison Break. If you guys have ever seen Prison Break, he kind of does look like Prison Break. But now, like I said, we're talking about levels. This game does have the highest level count at 22 base game levels, which is impressive. And if you get the four starter pack, if you get the 4 expansion pack levels, then you get some really good levels, bringing it to a total of 26 levels, which is a really good amount of levels for a first game. No other game has a higher level count than SSA. even including the expansion packs. SSA has the highest number of levels over all the games, even if you're not counting the expansion packs. 22 levels. There's no other game that has 22 levels in Skylanders, unless you're counting Spyro, unless you're counting Superchargers, which has chapters, but really there is only 13 levels. Now let's talk about the characters. I think SSA had one of the best rosters of characters. If you ever ask someone to name a Skylander, most likely they will say a Skylander from SSA, or they'll say Pop Fizz or Jetpack. But most of the time, if you ask someone to name a Skylander, they will say a Skylander like Gilgrunt, Spyro, Trigger Happy, Chop Chop, Prison Break. You know what I'm saying? If you ask someone, hey, name a Skylander, they're probably going to say Skylander from Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. That's just because that's how iconic this game is, and I think it's because a lot of people's favorite characters are from Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, because Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, like I said, did have a very, very, very good roster overall. Now, this is where I'll start to get in some of the problems that I do have with Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. If you're going to buy a Skylander, which is basically DLC for the game, if you're going to buy a Skylander, the reward you get for it isn't that great. If you're buying a Skylander just so you can get into an elemental gate, all you're getting out of it is a hat and being able to get closer to that 100%. Now, if you're buying a Skylander so you can have the Skylander because you want that Skylander, then you're getting a actual good reward. But like I said, if you're only buying the Skylander just so you can get into an elemental gate, the reward isn't that good. But if you buy the Skylander because you like it and you want it, there is a good reward for it. Who knows, maybe it'll be your favorite Skylander, you know? You never know until you buy the Skylander. And also, like that, there is, to beat the game, you need at least 8 Skylanders, which isn't that bad for the first game. There's 8 different elements, so with that being in mind, you only need 8 different Skylanders, and you already get 3 Skylanders in the starter pack. So really, all you need to do to get that 100% is have 5 more figures. All you need to do is buy 5 more figures. With each figure being $10, it would only take $50 to get all the way through the game. That's not including expansion packs, but if you want to get through the entire base game, you only needed to spend $50 plus the $70 of the starter pack, which for a game with Toys for Life as its concept isn't that bad. Only having to buy 8 figures isn't that bad for a Toys to Life game. Okay, now let's talk about the bosses. I already talked kind of a bit about them, but like I said, the bosses I don't think are that great. It's just the evil versions of the Skylanders, and also the final boss battle for Chaos I don't think is that great. It's just a combination of all the boss battles that you had seen before. Now all you gotta do is just attack Chaos's podium. I don't think it's that great of a boss battle. Definitely not my least favorite boss battle, but it isn't my favorite either. I think the boss battle, it just kind of gets boring, and I feel like it stretches on after time. Another gripe I do have about SSA is about, for me, like either the halfway point or a little bit after the halfway point, I started to just get tired of Skylanders. I just started to get tired of playing SSA. I don't know if that was just because I was playing so much of it, or it's because I wasn't getting that much enjoyment out of it. Near the end of the game, the levels do start to feel a little bit rushed, and they do feel like a little bit rushed, where the levels aren't as long as they normally would take, at least for me. And I also feel like they weren't taking as much care as the first couple levels were. I don't think the last couple levels really had that much creativity in them, if you know what I'm saying. Okay, now let's talk about the expansion packs and the stuff you get to do after the game. For Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, it has 4 different expansion packs. You have the Dark Light Krypt, Dragon's Peak, Pirate Shores, and Empire of Ice. And I have to say, Dark Light Krypt and Pirate Seas are some of the best expansion pack levels I have ever played in my life. They're great. If you never have got those expansion pack levels, invest on them right now. They are great. But for me, Dragon's Peak and Empire of Ice, they were just okay. They weren't bad, but they weren't okay. But Pirate Seas and Dark Light Krypt are great levels to have that you should get. Okay, now after the game, what else you can do? You can upgrade all your Skylanders by going back and trying to get the 100%, which isn't that hard to get the 100% in this game. It is time consuming though. After that, all you have to do is Cali's Heroic Challenges, which I think actually do, like the name says, do give you a good challenge at some point. Some of them are pretty easy, but others give you a good challenge. You know, if you play all of them in a row, it's gonna start being boring, but overall, the Heroic Challenges are fine. And then you have Battle Mode. Battle Mode for me is pretty fun if you're playing with a friend, you know. You get to battle each other, you know, and see who's the best, but after a while, it just feels kind of boring because there are only 3 different types of ones you can play. So for me, Battle Mode really isn't that, you know, it isn't that great, but it is a good addition. I'm kind of sad they did get rid of it in later games. Okay, so with all that being said, I feel like, you know, Skylanders Spyro's Adventure is still one of my favorite. I love all the Skylanders games, obviously, and it is a great game. I love Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. It is what got me into the series. Skylanders Spyro's Adventure gets 7 out of 10. And that's a pretty good 7 as well. It's probably a 7.5, but I'm not going to be saying that. I'm just going to give it the actual numbers. I'm not going to be putting I'm not going to be putting 0.5s or 0.8s, you know. I'm just going to be giving the actual number. It gets a 7 out of 10, which for me is really, really good. I love Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, and thank you guys for watching.